Alright, so I'm working on 2003 Baja, my 2003 Baja. Cold weather, extremely cold weather. You're talking anything below 10 degrees. You get a fuel smell in the cabin there when you run the blower. And this is, a lot of Subaru models have that problem. And what it is this little fuel hose right down here. You can see, not this one I'm pointing to, but the one right down there underneath this bracket. So I'm going to go ahead and take this bracket off. Got a new piece of hose we'll put on. What happens is it's rubber and it goes into this metal tube here and a metal tube that runs over here. And I guess when it gets extremely cold, the metal contracts, and that's enough to make it leak. You may not even see any fuel dripping. In this case, it's just this rubber hose gets a little wet, and that's what creates the smell. So it's not even a leak that's even dripping. It's just a little bit of weeping around the ends. So I'm going to go ahead and the easiest way, or well, the only way to get to it is take this bracket off. So we'll go ahead and take that bracket off. But like I said, they had a recall on like the WRXs for that, but they didn't do a recall on the other vehicles. But they all have that problem. This is a Baja Legacy. I had a Legacy that had the same problem. Impreza, all of them. That little hose right there leaks for some reason. So we're going to go ahead and pull that off. Other connections to check, of course, are right here where it goes down. These go into the fuel rails. Here's your fuel, of course. Check all those connections if you got gas smell. But these usually don't leak. It's usually this one right here under this bracket in the corner. So, yeah. We're going to take her off and see what she looks like. Get a new hose on there and call her a day. Alright, so pull the two bolts out of the power steering lines. They just float. This rigid line goes right into the pump, so you can't really move this out of the way, but you can sneak that bracket out easily under it. These two bolts, of course I took the spark plug wires off. Just took them off right up here at the coil. Pulled, snaked them down and out. Took the bracket off here. You could take those clips, if they're brittle, you can take those wire clips off first by taking out that 10 millimeter. But I just snuck it out underneath. One bolt up top right there. And don't be fooled. Two bolts at the bottom. I don't know why. Let's see, is it holding anything? Yeah, it goes in where the fuel rail attaches. Which, two bolts to the fuel rail, that's fine. But I guess they just ran them through this too. Anyway, don't be fooled. You can't really see that back one. So, two bolts, snake that out. And this is the line. That's the culprit right there. See all the dust all over it? It goes back to the fuel rail. It's because it's weeping gas. And probably from this joint right here, from what it looks like. See all that dirt stuck on there? So, yeah, we'll go ahead and replace that line with some good braided line. These clamps aren't bad. They're fuel injector clamps, solid, not regular little hose clamps. I don't like those. I like these solid man clamps here. So replace that piece of hose, and this will give me a chance to paint some parts up. So you can see I had to take the intake off also just to get to these two bolts down there. I mean, if you had a U-joint, U-joint on your socket, you could probably get those out without taking that airbox out, but it's easy to get out. And again, gave me the chance to paint the bracket for that too. So, all right, we'll get that hose changed here and be back in business. All right, so to get this hose off, we'll loosen the hose clamps, but nothing budges. You can't sneak it off of there. So the best way is just to pop the fuel rail off. You already have these two bolts out. There is one more 10 millimeter in the back here, which holds the fuel rail on. And then the whole thing just pulls out. It's just held in there by the injectors at this point. I got a zip tie holding the number 1 injector wire here, so I don't know if that's factory or not. This engine has been replaced, so again, don't know if that's that doesn't look factory to me. So yeah, pull those off. You can't really get them mixed up. One wire's longer than the other, obviously, to go to number 1 injector versus number 3. So yeah, we'll get the zip tie off. We'll pull the fuel rail out. Again, it'll just, the only problem you're going to have is breaking it loose from these joints right here. Sometimes twisting the hose back and forth helps a little bit if you can do it, maybe with a pair of pliers. Or since you're going to replace it anyway, you can just cut it. Just make a slit right down there. Be careful you don't cut into the fuel rail. And a slit right there, and it'll peel right off. And this gives us a chance to replace this return fuel line back here too. That's in the back after the fuel pressure regulator right there. This is the second most prone to leak, and it looks like this one is actually leaking slightly. There's some dirt on the front clamp there, so we'll go ahead and replace that when we're in there. Alright, so I found the easiest way is just to slit this. So I'm going to go ahead and slit that front connection. That'll allow me to pull the fuel rail out. I'm sure I can get the back hose off without slitting it. But now, be careful, because there could be some residual fuel pressure left in the system. If you just shut the car off, there probably is. So be careful you don't get, there's fuel in your eye. So if the car's been off for a couple hours, cooled down, there's no pressure in it. I don't know about Subarus, but working on Hondas, they'll hold quite a bit of pressure in the fuel system for quite some time. But this car here has been shut off for it's been probably 5 or 6 hours now, and there was no fuel pressure in the system. All right, so this will give you a chance to inspect the injector tips a little bit. See if we can focus. Yeah, look at that. Those aren't bad at all. Of course, like I said, this short block just replaced a few thousand miles ago by the dealer before I bought it. Unfortunately, it's got some piston slap, which you can see in my other videos. Pretty loud when it's cold. I think it's coming from cylinder number 3, I'm not sure. Of course, don't lose any of these guys. Let's put down. I do have an inspection camera, but I'm not going to use it. Inspect down into the intake there. Just looking for any dirt or carbon or anything built up in there. So there we go. Look at that. Not bad. This intake was from a 89,000 mile engine. So, like I said, just the short block was replaced. The heads were sent away and redone, put on. They're the old heads, though. Just that short block in there. She's brand new. Alright, so I got the fuel rail cleaned up. I didn't remove the injectors from the fuel rail because they're sealed fine, and I don't want to break that seal. I did put a little lubrication on these seals here, the O-ring, and then that dust shield there, just so they slide back in easier. I went ahead and cleaned up those ports. Just took a microfiber cloth and wrapped it around a screwdriver and cleaned up, make sure there's no dirt in there so it slides back in. Got the hoses on there. 4 clamps. The clamps in the back are tight because you don't want that hose moving anywhere. And I got the other clamps right there waiting for the fuel rail. If you've ever put something back together and then had to take it back apart to put the clamps on, you won't forget that. So, also in the back, same way. This pipe here has a stop on it for the hose, so you can only put the fuel line on so far. This one back here did not have a stop, but you can clearly see the dirt line where the new hose or the old hose came off, so just put it on exactly like that, and then we'll get these on. Alright, so we got everything back together. New hose is on. Went ahead and put the bracket back on. Don't forget your 10mm bolt back here and your vacuum supply to the fuel rail right here. So it's best to start all 3 of these bolts, these 2 down here and this one, getting everything lined up hand tight, and then tighten them the rest of the way. For these down here, you might have to lift the fuel rail up a little bit just by hand. Just put a little pressure upward on it to get these to line up. And so that's assembly is the reverse of disassembly, basically. Put everything back on the same. I still got to put the spark plug wires and intake and stuff back on, but I'll get that done. Alright, so we're going to check for leaks now. So we're going to get inside the vehicle. Just going to let the fuel pump prime. So there you go, you can see it 87,000. But only about 3,000 on the engine. Just going to turn that on and off a few times. That's going to pressurize the system for us. And then we'll check for leaks out here. I'll have to get a little. Alright, so let's look in there. This thing, you just run your finger around the bottom. Around the edge there. Nope, comes back dry. Do it in there. Dry, no fuel. How are we looking back here? Doesn't look like we're leaking anywhere. Looking good. It's a little wet there because I used a little tiny touch of oil to get this so I could slide that on. I couldn't get it on there. But put a little bit of touch of oil on it and it slides right on. Don't want to use too much because you don't want it sliding off or leaking, but just barely wet the metal and it'll slide right on. So looks like we're good. All right, awesome. So yeah, there you go. Fuel smell in a Subaru. Check your fuel lines. These two right here by the passenger side fuel rail are usually the culprit. You got some more lines, like I said, over here. And of course your fuel filter. Check all those lines. But that's usually the culprit is that one right in there. So got that taken care of. Awesome. So, have any questions or comments? Leave them below. See ya.